My name is Ella Stevens. I'm 29 years old. And until 3 weeks ago, I thought my life was settled in the quiet, unremarkable way people don't notice until it's taken from them. I wasn't chasing anything bigger. I wasn't bored. I wasn't waiting for a sign that I should run. I believed I was already standing inside the future I'd chosen. 4 years with someone does that. It trains you to stop imagining exits. You start buying practical things together. You plan for normal, not disaster. I'd been with Daniel for almost 4 years. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, one of those loud, crowded apartments where everyone talks over the music and pretends they're not checking the time. We ended up in a corner, talking for nearly an hour, easy, natural, like we'd known each other longer than we had. Within 6 months, we were living together. He worked in logistics management, long hours, steady income, the kind of job that doesn't impress strangers but pays the bills on time. I worked downtown, buried in paperwork and deadlines. We weren't rich. We weren't struggling. We were comfortable enough to talk about marriage. Last Christmas, we'd wandered through a mall to escape the cold. No plan, no pressure. We drifted into a jewelry store without meaning to. Glass cases, soft lighting, rings arranged like promises. I stopped in front of a sapphire ring. Simple, elegant, deep blue. That one, I said casually, like it was a joke. Daniel smiled. I didn't know then that 2 days later, he'd gone back alone to ask about financing options. The night everything fell apart was supposed to be happy. My cousin Mark was hosting an engagement party at his house. Suburbs, manicured lawn, the kind of place people buy when they're sure of their choices. About 40 guests. Family, friends, co-workers. Daniel had been distant all week. Short answers, edgy. He blamed work stress, deadlines, late nights. I accepted it because I trusted him. I even offered to bring him dinner one night when he stayed late. No, he said. I'll grab something downstairs. We arrived around 7. The party was already loud. Music spilling from outdoor speakers. Groups of people laughing, drinks in hand. The smell of grilled food and fresh grass. It felt warm, normal, safe. I was talking with Mark near the kitchen island when Daniel walked up holding a drink. His cheeks were flushed, his movements just a little too loose. Can we talk? He asked. He didn't lower his voice. Mark stopped mid-sentence. Sure, I said carefully. What's going on? I'm serious, Daniel said. We need to talk about us. I glanced around. People were starting to look. Mark's fiancée watched from across the room, her expression tightening. Okay, I said, let's step outside. No, the word snapped. I'm tired of pretending, he said, louder now. I don't think this is going to work. My stomach dropped. The music suddenly felt too loud, like it was pressing in on us. Daniel, I said quietly, this isn't the place. He didn't listen. You could never be a good wife, he said. I'm not going to marry you. Silence. Not awkward silence, not polite silence, the kind that lands all at once, heavy, final. Every conversation stopped. Every face turned toward us. I felt heat rush to my face. My hands clenched without me telling them to. But I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I looked at him, trying to decide if this was alcohol or something he'd been holding back. His eyes were hard, almost daring me to react. I didn't recognize him. I didn't say anything. I turned around, picked up my jacket from the chair by the door, and walked out. Behind me, someone whispered, "What just happened?" The murmurs followed, low, curious, hungry. I didn't look back. The drive home was silent. No music, no calls, just the hum of the engine and my own breathing. My hands shook on the steering wheel. When I reached the apartment, I sat on the couch in the dark for a long time. Streetlight shadows moved slowly across the wall. I replayed the moment again and again, trying to find the warning I must have missed. My phone buzzed. A text. It was from Lena, one of Daniel's closest friends. Do you even know what happened after you left? I stared at the message. Then I typed back one word. What? 3 dots appeared. Can I call you? I swallowed. Yeah. The phone rang. Hey, Lena said. Her voice sounded tight, like she'd been crying, or trying very hard not to. I don't even know how to start this, she said, but you deserve to know what happened after you left. I leaned back against the arm of the couch. The apartment felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Okay, I said, tell me. When you walked out, she said, no one knew what to do. The music kept playing, but it felt wrong, like noise pretending nothing had happened. I closed my eyes. Daniel just stood there, she went on, near the patio doors, staring at the floor. People tried to talk to him, but he barely responded. So he felt bad, I said flatly. Yes, Lena replied, but that's not the part that matters. My chest tightened. There was a woman there, she said. I frowned. What do you mean? His ex, Lena said quietly. The word landed heavier than I expected. She wasn't supposed to be there, Lena continued. At least not as someone who mattered. I didn't even realize who she was at first, but then... Then what? I asked. She walked straight up to him. No hesitation, no awkwardness. She put her hand on his arm, and he didn't move away. I pictured it without wanting to. He leaned into her, Lena added, like it was normal, like she'd done it 100 times before. My throat went tight. That's when my stomach dropped, Lena said, because friends don't do that. Not like that. Did anyone else see? I asked. Yes, Mark's fiancée noticed. Her face changed. You know that look people get when they're putting pieces together faster than they want to? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Then I heard something, Lena said. Something I wasn't meant to hear. I waited. He said to her, "You told me you were going to end it clean." The sentence slid under my ribs and stayed there. "And what clean?" I didn't hear her response, Lena said. But the way he said it, quiet, urgent, it wasn't a joke. It wasn't drunk rambling. I felt cold. I followed her to the bathroom, Lena admitted. I didn't plan to. I just needed to understand. What did she say? I asked. She didn't deny anything. She just kept saying it was complicated, that things weren't simple between you and Daniel. I let out a breath that scraped on the way out. She said she thought Daniel had already made up his mind, Lena went on, that she assumed tonight was going to go differently. Differently how? I asked. Lena paused. Like you weren't going to walk away. Silence stretched between us. Lena, I said slowly, how long do you think this has been going on? I don't know, she said. I didn't ask. I didn't want to hear the answer. After we hung up, I stayed on the couch for a long time. The silence felt heavier now, filled with things I hadn't known an hour earlier. I thought about his excuses, about the dinners he'd skipped, about how easy it had been to believe him. Something shifted in me then. If this hadn't started tonight, then the truth wasn't emotional. It was logistical, and I knew exactly where to look next. I didn't sleep, not because I was crying, not because I was spiraling. I was thinking. The apartment was quiet after midnight. No traffic, no voices, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock above the stove. Lena's words kept replaying. You told me you were going to end it clean. That didn't sound like confusion. It sounded like coordination. I opened my laptop, logged into the shared account. We'd set it up 2 years earlier. Rent, utilities, groceries, the boring things that make a life feel legitimate. At first glance, everything looked normal. Rent paid, electric bill, internet, grocery charges I recognized. Then I slowed down, scrolled back. A restaurant charge I didn't recognize. Downtown, upscale, not somewhere we ever went together. $180, 2 months ago. Same restaurant 3 weeks later, $210. My pulse didn't spike, it sharpened. Then I saw the hotel, a boutique place 15 minutes from our apartment, $340, 4 weeks ago. That weekend, Daniel had told me he was out of town for work. Chicago. I opened a new tab, looked up the hotel, checked the dates, compared them to my calendar. Everything lined up too cleanly. Late nights, missed dinners, arguments over nothing. It wasn't random. It was scheduled. I took screenshots, 11 transactions in total. Restaurants, drinks, ride shares that didn't make sense. Each one confirmed what my instincts had known and my heart had avoided. By the time the sky shifted from black to gray, I was done pretending this had been a mistake. Around 6, I heard a key in the lock. Careful, slow. Daniel froze when he saw me at the kitchen table. Laptop open, screenshots visible, cold coffee untouched. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I looked up. We need to talk, I said. And the look on his face told me everything. Daniel didn't sit. He stood near the counter, jacket still on, tie loose and crooked like he hadn't slept. I know last night was bad, he said. I was drunk. I didn't mean... How long? I asked. He blinked. What? How long have you been seeing her? His eyes flicked to the screen. A while, he said. I nodded once. You told me you were traveling for work, staying late, exhausted. I didn't want to hurt you. That's not why you lied, I said. You lied because telling the truth would have forced you to stop. He ran a hand through his hair. I was confused, he said. Everything felt routine. And then she showed up, and it felt different. There it was. Boredom, dressed up as honesty. So you humiliated me in front of 40 people, I said, because stability stopped entertaining you. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, is that I was planning a future while you were organizing a secret life. He stepped closer. I made a mistake, he said. Please, can we fix this? I studied him. The tears came, familiar, convincing. But all I saw was calculation. There's nothing to fix, I said. I want you out by the end of the week. He stared at me. This is my place, too. The lease is in my name, I said. You moved in later. You can check. His mouth opened, closed. You're really doing this? You left long before last night, I said. I'm just making it official. He turned toward the bedroom. The door slammed. I stayed where I was, not shaking, not second-guessing. Just clear. Daniel didn't come out of the bedroom for the rest of the morning. I heard drawers opening and closing, clothes being shoved into bags. At one point, the shower turned on and stayed on far too long, like he was trying to scrub something away that water couldn't reach. I didn't follow him. I didn't check on him. I stayed in the kitchen, exactly where I'd drawn the line. The next few days were efficient in the ugliest way possible. We barely spoke. When we did, it was stripped of emotion. I'll take my clothes tonight. Fine. I'll need a box for the kitchen stuff. I'll leave one by the door. On the second day, he tried to take the coffee table. I bought that before we met, I said calmly. He paused. Are you sure? I have the receipt, I replied. He didn't argue. He tried again with the bookshelf. Same answer, same outcome. By the third day, he stopped asking. Saturday morning, his parents arrived with a rented truck. His father avoided eye contact completely. His mother gave me a tight, pitying smile, like she thought I was the one who'd failed something fundamental. I didn't correct her. I didn't explain. They loaded his things in silence. The blender, half the dishes, his winter coat he never wore. Piece by piece, the apartment emptied of him. Before he left, Daniel stood in the doorway. I never meant to hurt you, he said. I looked at him for a long moment. I believe that, I said. You just didn't care enough not to. He flinched. Then he left. The door clicked shut. The quiet that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. That night, I blocked his number. I blocked his email. I blocked him everywhere I could think of. I assumed that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, my cousin Mark called. I heard what happened, he said. Daniel reached out, gave me his version. And? I asked. I wanted to hear yours. So I told him everything. The party, the lies, the account, the hotel charge, the excuses stacked on top of each other. Mark didn't interrupt. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. I'm sorry, he said. What he did crossed a line. I know, I replied. For what it's worth, he added, he's not in the wedding party anymore. My fiancé made that clear. That gave me a small, distant sense of closure. Not satisfaction, just confirmation. For a few days after Daniel left, nothing happened. No messages, no late-night calls, no accidental run-ins. The silence felt intentional, like something was gathering itself before making contact again. Then my phone buzzed. It wasn't Daniel. It was Tyler, a mutual friend we'd both known for years. Neutral, direct. Do you have a minute, he wrote. I hesitated. Sure. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, Tyler said over the phone, but you should know why Daniel's been reaching out to people. Reaching out how? I asked. Trying to explain himself, trying to see if anyone can soften things. And? I asked. It's not working, Tyler said, because the story's falling apart. I waited. The woman he was seeing, his ex, she wasn't exclusive. That didn't shock me. It landed with a dull, familiar weight. She's been dating someone else the entire time, Tyler continued. A guy from her office. That's who she actually considers her boyfriend. I closed my eyes. So Daniel was the secret, I said. Yes, Tyler replied, not the other way around. Apparently, Daniel found out the same week he moved out. He'd seen messages on her phone, confronted her, expected what? Comfort? Loyalty? She laughed, not cruelly, casually. She told him he was a distraction, something familiar, something temporary, a backup plan. Daniel wasn't her mistake. He was her option. They tried to make it work, Tyler said, for about a week. He showed up at her place unannounced one night. My stomach tightened. She told him to leave. When he didn't, she threatened to call the police. I imagined it easily. Daniel standing there, stunned, holding on to something that had already let go. And that's not all, Tyler added. There was a pause. He lost his job. That one landed differently. Repeated lateness, missed deadlines, and a blow-up with his supervisor over a filing issue, Tyler said. Apparently, this had been building for a while. The picture formed on its own. Late nights that weren't work. Stress he couldn't explain. A life collapsing from the inside. He's been calling people, Tyler said. Friends, acquaintances, asking them to talk to you. Has anyone? I asked. No, he said. A few people told him straight up that what he did was unforgivable. After we hung up, I sat in the apartment and let the silence settle again. Daniel had lost everything he thought he was trading me for. And suddenly the messages made sense. The apologies, the regret, the urgency. He wasn't reaching out because he missed me. He was reaching out because his backup plan had collapsed, and I wasn't available to catch him. Once people know the truth, it spreads quietly. Not in dramatic confrontations, not in loud arguments, in pauses, in unanswered messages, in invitations that never arrive. Daniel felt it before he admitted it. Friends stopped replying right away, then stopped replying at all. Plans were made without him and posted later, casually, like he hadn't been part of the equation to begin with. No one announced they were choosing sides. They just did. A week later, another mutual friend reached out, then another. Each conversation followed the same pattern: hesitation, discomfort, then the truth slipping out anyway. He's been asking about you. He wants to explain himself. He keeps saying it wasn't supposed to end like this. I gave them all the same answer. I'm not interested in hearing explanations. They didn't argue, because explanations only matter when the damage is still theoretical. Daniel tried indirect routes when direct ones failed. A message through a coworker I barely knew, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize, an email that started with, "I don't expect you to forgive me." I blocked each one without opening them fully. Not out of anger, out of clarity. My cousin Mark checked in again a few days later. "Just so you know," he said, "Daniel tried to apologize to my fiancée too." "For what?" I asked. "For putting everyone in an awkward position," Mark said. "Not for what he did, for how visible it became." That told me everything. The problem was never the betrayal. It was the exposure. He still showed up to the wedding ceremony, but that was it. No reception, no speeches, no seat at the table afterward. He stood in the back, quiet, disconnected. Someone you'd assume was a distant acquaintance, not someone who had once been woven into everyone's lives. I didn't speak to him. I didn't have to. The distance spoke for me. Later, I heard he'd tried reaching out to his ex again. She didn't respond. She had moved on cleanly, efficiently, without looking back. Exactly the way he hadn't. By the end of that week, the narrative had settled. Not the one Daniel wanted. The real one. He hadn't been unlucky. He hadn't been misunderstood. He hadn't made a single mistake. He'd made a series of choices, and now he was living inside the consequences of them. As for me, I wasn't waiting for closure anymore. I already had it. The apartment didn't feel empty. It felt unfinished. For a few days, I left everything where it was. The couch, the photos, the space where his shoes used to sit. Not because I missed him, but because I wanted to be sure I wasn't changing things out of reaction. Then, one Saturday morning, I woke up and knew exactly what to do. I moved the couch to the opposite wall, took down the framed photos we'd never argued about because neither of us cared enough to defend them, changed the sheets, donated the books he'd left behind. Each decision was small. Together, they added up to something steady. I started going to the gym in the mornings before work, not to punish myself, not to reinvent my body, just to remind myself that I could show up somewhere consistently and leave stronger than I arrived. I cooked again, simple meals, quiet dinners, food that didn't require conversation to enjoy. Friends checked in, carefully at first. I chose silence, not because I was ashamed, because I was done explaining. I wasn't dating. I wasn't scrolling apps late at night wondering what I'd done wrong. I was sleeping better than I had in months. There were moments, of course, ordinary things that still caught me off guard. A song he liked, a restaurant we'd planned to try. The automatic reach for my phone when something mildly interesting happened. Those moments passed. They always did. One evening, Mark came by to drop something off. We sat at the kitchen table and talked about wedding logistics, seating charts, timing, normal life. At one point, he looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. I thought about it. Not fine, not thriving, but grounded. "Yes," I said, "I really am." And I meant it, because I wasn't rebuilding from nothing. I was continuing from something I'd almost lost, myself. For the first time since the party, I didn't feel like I was reacting to what had happened. I felt like I was choosing what happened next. Sometimes I replay that moment. Not obsessively, not with regret. Just curiously. The way Daniel stood there. The music still playing. The laughter dying mid-breath. "You could never be a good wife. I'm not going to marry you." At the time, it felt like the worst moment of my life. Public, humiliating, final. Now I see it differently. If he'd been kinder, I might have stayed. If he'd been quieter, I might have tried to fix it. If he'd softened it, I might have married him. I might have accepted a ring financed during lies. I might have tied myself legally and financially to someone who'd already proven he could live a double life. Instead, he said it loudly, in front of witnesses, in a way that made it impossible to ignore. He didn't just end the relationship, he destroyed the illusion. And that, whether he meant to or not, was a gift. I walked away with my dignity intact. I walked away before contracts, before shared debt, before paperwork that would have made leaving harder than staying. I walked away with the truth. Daniel has to live with who he revealed himself to be. I don't. I get to live with who I chose to become after. I don't hate him. I don't miss him. I'm not waiting for an apology that would only exist to make him feel better. I'm relieved. Relieved I found out before the wedding. Relieved I didn't waste another 4 years. Relieved I didn't confuse longevity with loyalty. Sometimes the worst moment of your life isn't a curse. It's a warning. And if you're lucky, you hear it in time.